Hello eggheads, my name is CJ, Skylar, Tropicpunk, whatever you want to call me. Welcome back to another YouTube video. Today, we're going to be reacting to some Republican primaries. Now, I'm not an American, but I like politics, and I don't make a lot of political content on this channel. So a lot of you might not really know what my political beliefs are or where I'm aligned with, so allow me to explain myself and my political stance to you guys.
I can explain.
I am a self-described libertarian socialist, right? So basically, what that means is radical left-wing economics, right? Along with freedom of self, right? Freedom of self-expression, self-determination, you know, just the individual liberties thereof. You should be free as a person and not beholden to some higher power, whilst at the same time, everyone should be wanting to work together as a community, as a collective for the greater good of society. That's what I believe in, which is why when I react to a Republican, I often find myself debunking a lot of what they're saying, whilst at the same time, some of the things they say, particularly some of the more like libertarian sounding things, my mind will think, you had me until that one final thing where it just, your whole argument fell flat. Because there's hypocrisy there. You know, you want individual liberties, but like, yet you won't allow people to have an abortion. You know, that kind of thing. So that's where I stand with the Republicans, is I really don't. I am more aligned with the Democrats in an American sense, but at the same time, I don't like either party because they don't fit with my idea of freedom from a higher power. You know, why are we beholden to one person to rule over us? You know, did that affect the audio? I hope not. So without further ado, this is Vivek Ramaswamy in the Republican primaries. Now, from what I understand, this guy is running for the Republican nomination for the candidacy for the President of the United States in 2024. And this guy is an interesting character. He comes across as very assertive, right? He seems to really believe what he's talking about, at the very least. And while I might not believe everything he's saying, there's certain things, once again, where it's like some of the more like libertarian dialogue that comes out of his mouth, it gets me until one final kicker, where his whole argument just falls flat. So without further ado, Vivek Ramaswamy. I feel like I'm pronouncing his name wrong, and I hope I'm not, but I feel like I probably am.
Nikki, you were bankrupted when you left the UN. After you left the UN, you became a military contractor. You actually joined service on the board of Boeing, whose back you scratched for a very long time, and then gave foreign multinational speeches like Hillary Clinton is, and now you're a multi-millionaire. That math does not add up. It adds up to the fact that you are corrupt. Identity politics.
Now let's talk about that whole thing where she was in the UN, this other candidate was in the UN for like a very short amount of time, and is suddenly a millionaire. Yeah, now I like him calling people out on corruption. Corruption is such a big problem in the government, and to me, right, no one party should be allowed to be more corrupt than another. Corruption should not even be a thing. Stamp it out, even within your own party. I 100% agree with this. And I don't like the UN. The UN goes against everything I believe. Because, once again, it's such a authoritarian thing, you know? There is a group of wealthy individuals from every nation state on the planet, right, that rule over our day-to-day lives. It's like we are just, you know, being strung along by these people, you know? So, I like what this guy said there as his first opening thing that we hear here, but now he's going into identity politics, which, oh boy, I have some things to say about that.
This new religion that says your race, your gender, and your sexuality are your identity, it is anti-American. It is meritocratic, it's anti-meritocratic, and it is dividing this country to a breaking point.
Now, identity politics is not a thing. Like, you know, like, well, I mean, It is, but not in the way he explains it, right? Like, nobody is ever being put in power solely based on their identity, right? Nobody is ever getting anywhere solely based on the fact that they are a person of color, which, to me, this person looks like a person of color, so the fact that he says things like this, I'm like, you know, does it even make sense for him to be calling out this kind of thing? You know, nobody's getting into, like, positions of, you know, prominence because they're a woman. Nobody's getting there because they are LGBTQ+. It is still like you get places on your own merit, but, you know, people are a lot more open now to the fact that people in minority groups are still just as capable as people who aren't. So it looks like people, right, who are minorities are getting special treatment because to you, you were getting special treatment your whole life, right? For, like, obviously not this person, he's a person of color, right? But straight, white, cisgender individuals getting treated with, like, importance their entire lives suddenly see minorities getting the same treatment. And so they're like, whoa, they're being treated specially. But no, you were being treated that way your whole life. Now things are just equal, and suddenly you think that's bad.
But it's even worse when Republicans try to play the same game. Nikki Haley's campaign launch video sounded like a woke Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light ad talking about how she would kick in heels. At the first debate, she said that only a woman can get this job done.
There are certain things that a woman should be making policy over instead of men. For example, women should certainly be, like, the ones deciding whether people can get abortions. That should be a woman's job. It should be a woman's job to decide on matters of women, you know? And so many men, out-of-touch men in politics, in positions of power, make laws that affect women when they don't even know how a woman's body works. You know, like, it's a problem. So there are certain jobs that are best suited to a woman in politics.
What she said. After the third debate, when I criticized Ronna McDaniel after 5 failed years of leadership of this party, and criticized Nikki for her corrupt foreign dealings as a military contractor, she said that I have a woman problem.
That's definitely not a woman problem. That's just her getting defensive about corruption and trying to stave off those allegations. She is still very clearly corrupt, and that is defensiveness and using her being a woman as, like, oh, I'm a woman, you're clearly against women by calling me out on this. That I disagree with. It's not because you're a woman, it's because you're corrupt, right? That's just plain and simple.
Nikki, I don't have a woman problem. You have a corruption problem.
That right there. I can agree with Vivek on that. On that, I can 100% agree. There is a corruption problem with everyone in government, and I have no doubt that, Vivek, you are corrupt as well. I have no doubts in my mind. Every politician is. And this is why, right, I say that I align more with Democrats, but I am still so quick to call out any Democrat on their bullshit, right? It's because they're all just as corrupt as each other.
I think that's what people need to know. Nikki is corrupt. This is a woman who will sit...
Can we see your corruption scandals, though?
This is the problem. Using identity politics more effectively than Kamala Harris is a form of intellectual fraud. And actually, and there's our donor puppet masters wielding their puppet right up here tonight. This is how this game is played. The puppet masters put up their puppet, and I reject the use of identity politics in this party. It's been a cancer coming from the left, and I'm sick and tired of the double standards the people of this country are too. Having 2 X chromosomes does not immunize you from criticism.
Having 2 X chromosomes does not immunize you from criticism? I agree, right? If you're a woman, it does not immunize you from criticism. Now, the part that I don't like about the way he worded that is that 2 X chromosomes is what inherently equals woman. It equals, like, the female sex, sure, but gender is a whole different thing, and if anyone knows anything about me, it's that I support transgender rights. Obviously, I identify as non-binary, right? So it makes sense that I would, right? Now, you see, identity politics right? It's an interesting concept that you would bring up there, because to me, it seems like the left would not even care if you just stopped making a big deal out of it. The only reason it's such a debate is because Republicans are so intent on, like, you know, demonizing transgender people, right? Like, diminishing the rights of minority groups. And they try to frame it as, we just want everyone to be equal on the same footing, and, like, you're giving special treatment to minorities. No, nobody is. They're just allowing them the same rights and freedoms you've enjoyed your entire life as a straight, white, cis-het individual. So, you know, that's what I don't like about Republicans, is that they think that identity politics is coming from the left, when in reality, what the left is doing is as a response to Republicans trying to basically criminalize minority groups' existence.
Foreign policy experience is not the same as foreign policy wisdom. I was the first person to say we need a reasonable peace deal in Ukraine. Now a lot of the neocons are quietly coming along to that position, with the exceptions of Nikki Haley and Joe Biden, who still support this, what I believe is pointless war in Ukraine.
I think the war in Ukraine is pointless as well. I don't see any reason why it should go on. Let me just turn off my AC. I think that yes, the war in Ukraine is pointless. It is a war between two wealthy rulers of two nation states, just like as a dick measuring contest. You know, I don't like it. I don't like people being forced to go to war for some wealthy oligarch either. You know, I don't think it's right. You know, I think that these wars are always going to be senseless. The way I understand it, though, is that Russia is prolonging this attack. They've basically already taken what they came for, right? They wanted the regions of Donetsk and Luhansk, but they are continuing to prolong this war so they can take a land corridor from Donetsk and Luhansk through to Crimea, which they also illegally annexed under conspicuous circumstances in 2014. Why do they need that land corridor? I thought they were just there to liberate the territories of Donetsk and Luhansk, which wanted independence from Ukraine, or would rather be part of Russia, or whatever it is that they supposedly said. So why do you want more? Tell me, Putin, why do you want more than that? I feel like you're prolonging this war needlessly. Now, one might suggest, okay, maybe that's because Ukraine won't come to the negotiating table. Yeah, but obviously Ukraine has a vested interest in keeping all of their land, right? Like, Ukraine, the way Ukraine still sees it, they still rule Crimea. I believe they do as well. I believe that, like, Crimea should be Ukrainian. Whether Donetsk and Luhansk should be Ukrainian is kind of a different story to me. And I'm a lot more on the fence about Donetsk and Luhansk, because those are regions that have a sizable Russian population that said we are declaring our independence from Ukraine, but no one ever recognized it. The People's Republic of Donetsk and the People's Republic of Luhansk did say, we don't want to be Ukraine. If they said that, I kind of support their right to self-determination, because that's what I believe in. But to the best of my knowledge, that was never what happened in Crimea. So, while I think that if Donetsk and Luhansk want to be Russian, they should be, but Crimea should stay Ukrainian, which is why, right, to me, a understandable peace solution here, which would never happen, it's outlandish to think that it would, but an understandable peace agreement here would be, alright, Russia, you take Donetsk and Luhansk, give Crimea back to Ukraine. I mean, like, the Soviet Union, right, gave, to the best of my knowledge, I don't know if it happened under the Soviet Union or under the Russian Empire previously prior to that, but it was the Crimea Peninsula was given as a gift. Oh yeah, it was under the Soviet Union. It was given as a gift from Soviet Russia to Soviet Ukraine, and yet, like, that territory was a peaceful land exchange from Russia to Ukraine, And when Russia gave that land to Ukraine, they're saying, this is yours. This land is Ukrainian, you have it, right? Crimea is Ukrainian. And, right, even if, right, the Soviet Union still wanted to claim to be if Soviet Russia wanted to claim to be the owners of Crimea after that exchange, right, any claim that Russia had to Crimea is gone. Gone after the collapse of the Soviet Union, right? The fact that Crimea remained part of Ukraine after the fall of the Soviet Union, right? That is Ukrainian land, and whether Russia wants to believe it or not, they gave that land to Ukraine. To say that it's still theirs and they want it back doesn't make any sense.
And I think those with foreign policy experience, one thing that Joe Biden and Nikki Haley have in common is that neither of them could even state for you 3 provinces in eastern Ukraine that they want to send our troops to actually fight for.
I literally just named 3 provinces in eastern Ukraine. Although Crimea is more like south. But Donetsk, Luhansk, Crimea. It's like these people don't even watch the news sometimes, and yet they're the ones making these policy decisions.
Look at that. This is what I want people to understand. These people she has no idea what the hell the names of those provinces are, but she wants to send our sons and daughters and our troops and our military equipment to go fight it. So reject this myth that they've been selling you, that somebody had a cup of coffee stint at the UN and then makes $8 million after, has real foreign policy experience. It takes an outsider to see this through. Look at the blank expression. She doesn't know the names of the provinces that she wants to actually fight for. And there's a couple of messages right here.
I mean, he's got her hook, line, and sinker here, right? And I agree, if you can't even name the names of the provinces, you have no right to be making those decisions. I mean, you're not informed, right? So, I know, once again, a thing that I can somewhat agree with him on. And I even agree with him that the war is pointless. I agree, this war, it should never have even been a war to begin with, but the fact that it is, it should have been over a lot sooner than it was. And I 100% can agree with him on that matter.
The owner's right there. Enough. First of all, Chris Christie also doesn't know what provinces in eastern Ukraine he actually wants to fight for. Chris, your version of foreign policy experience was closing a bridge from New Jersey to New York. Yeah. So do everybody a favor, just walk yourself off that stage, enjoy a nice meal, and get the hell out of this place.
Oh!
Have been licking Donald Trump's boots for years. For money and endorsements. Ron DeSantis, you've been a great governor, but you would have never been one without actually begging Donald Trump for that endorsement. You attacked him in your book a year ago. Same thing with Chris Christie as a lobbyist, begging them for COVID money for his special interests in New Jersey, prepping him for the debates last time around. The real enemy is not Donald Trump. It's not even Joe Biden. It is the deep state that at least Donald Trump attempted to take on. And if you want somebody who's going to speak truth to power, then vote for somebody who's going to speak the truth to you. Why am I the only person on the stage, at least, who can say that January 6th now does look like it was an inside job?
I think, yes, the deep state is a problem. The way I think of the deep state is the United Nations, the European Union, although at least the European Union makes some good decisions I agree with sometimes, right? Where, I like the Schengen area. I like that people can move freely between European countries and all that shit. I like that. I like that it brings Europe closer together, and it's working towards people having freedom to move and work and live wherever they want to. Humans should not be beholden to a border. That's what I've always believed. We're in a globalized world now, right? The internet has broadened our horizons so much. Why are we still stuck in one place and don't have that freedom to broaden our horizons as much as we should? I think there should be a lot more work towards more freedom of movement between different nations in the future. Maybe not so much economically tying countries together, but certainly more for tourism and immigration purposes. A great place to start would be between Australia and New Zealand in that regard, and I've always campaigned for more of a close-knit, almost Schengen area-like agreement, minus the economic ties, between Australia and New Zealand to start with. And I think eventually broadening that to more of like a Commonwealth setting. You know, I think there should be more freedom of movement, and the EU is good in that regard. But back to what he was saying, you know, the deep state is a problem. It depends what you define the deep state as. Usually I think of the deep state, a lot of people when they say deep state are probably deep in that QAnon source. You know, they think of it as like the Illuminati, you know. I think of the deep state as just authoritarian, you know, multinational regimes, you know, full of oligarchs and people in positions of power who should not be there, who were unelected, you know. That's what I think of as the deep state. I think of the deep state could also be like, you know, the people who bribe those people to make policy decisions for them, i.e. the likes of big tech, you know, or like, you know, any other industry like, you know, oil and gas tycoons, all of that stuff, all these big wealthy oligarchs. That's who the deep state is. Anyone in authority who's unelected.
That the government lied to us for 20 years about Saudi Arabia's involvement in 9/11. That the Great Replacement theory is not some grand right-wing conspiracy theory, but a basic statement of the Democratic Party's platform. That the 2020 election was indeed stolen by big tech. That the 2016 election, the one that Trump won for sure, was also one that was stolen from him by the national security establishment. And actually put up the Trump-Russia collusion oath that they knew was false. There's a reason why I'm the only person on the stage who can say these things. That's what it's going to take, not people who are licking his boots one time and now Monday morning quarterbacking and criticizing him when it's convenient. Transgenderism is a mental health disorder.
I'm going to stop you right there, buddy, because I know immediately where you're going with this. And like I said before, I support my transgender brothers and sisters, right, so I feel it needs to be said. Gender dysphoria is a mental health problem. Where so many Republicans fall flat and misunderstand the entire thing is that the cure is not eradicate transgender people, stop them from existing, try to make them align with their assigned gender at birth. The solution to their gender dysphoria is to transition. Like, genuinely, the only way, right, to help these people is to make sure that their gender, their expression, the way they are, aligns with how they feel. You know? Like, the way they were born shouldn't matter. Let's say someone was born a man. Because people love to talk about, like, transgender women and then forget that transgender men exist. Like, let's talk about transgender women for a second. Right? Let's say someone was assigned male at birth. Right? I have so many friends who are trans girls, so I feel like it needs to be said. The way you are treating them, you are making them feel subhuman. You know? And it is disgusting, it is disgraceful. I think a lot of these people see a trans woman and immediately think it's a man trying to be a groomer. No. This is somebody, right, who was born into a life that doesn't align with the way their brain is. There is a genuine, right, like, chemical difference between a transgender brain and a cisgender or non-transgender brain. Right? There is a literal physical difference there. A transgender brain operates in the same way as the gender they identify as. Right? Whereas a person who was assigned male at birth still believes they're a man, their brain operates like a man's brain does. Right? A person who is assigned male at birth goes on to think, holy shit, I think I'm a woman. Right? Their brain, from the second they were born, was inclined to be that way. They are mentally a woman. The right thing to do is to allow them to be a woman. They're a woman. Transgender women are women. Transgender men are men. And I think that's just something the Republicans don't understand.
We don't let you smoke a cigarette by the age of 18. We don't let you
Oh God, I think I know where he's going with this.
by the age of 21. And I just challenge Ron DeSantis to go one step further and support what I think is clearly within the authority to do using federal funds, just like Reagan did in '84, for the Highway Act that said the minimum drinking age needs to be 21. we can do the same thing when it comes to banning genital mutilation or chemical castration. And Iran
Okay, nobody's doing that. Nobody's doing that to children. I think, like, I don't know where this myth came from, but it is yet another piece of misinformation from the right. And, like, this is one thing I can never agree with. Nobody's doing this shit to children. In fact, you say create laws against this. There already are. That's why it's not happening. Nobody is forcing kids to transition, right? People are explicitly, like, you know, if you talk to anyone with any transgender experience, you know, if you talk to any transgender people, I have so many transgender friends, if you talk to them, like, they have to wait until they are of age to receive any kind of substantial treatment of their gender dysphoria. They have to wait until they're of age to transition for the most part. Like, the most they will do at a age of minority, right, is give them hormone blockers, right, to stall puberty, which is reversible, which is why they do this, right? It is reversible, and it allows them to be older, know themselves, know if this is really who they are, before making the jump to transitioning. They don't allow minors to transition, and they especially do not forcibly transition minors. I don't know if I can make that any clearer, but clearly it's something Republicans don't want to hear because it doesn't fit their narrative.
Anything like that at the federal level, I'm crystal clear, that's where I stand. That's a mental health disorder, that's where you need to be at. This climate...
Gender dysphoria is a mental health disorder, but the cure is transitioning, not conversion therapy, not pretending that transgender people don't exist and hoping they'll go away, and especially not trying to eradicate them with what is essentially becoming a genocide. Next.
Change agenda that is shackling this country like a set of handcuffs. I said it at the first debate and I stand by it. The climate change agenda is a hoax because it has nothing to do with the climate.
Now, climate change is something that I have mixed views on. Right? Now, a lot of you guys might have seen this video already if you watch my political content sometimes, but I have a video that I'll leave up on the corner of the screen somewhere, right? And in the description, in a comment, right? Where I said net zero emissions is not the most pressing ecological issue of our time, because it's just not. Where I stand is the climate changing? Yes. Is that a normal thing for the Earth? Yes. Are humans impacting the way the climate is changing irreversibly? Possibly, but it's not conclusive whether we know that yet or not. The best that we can do as humans is act based on the science that we currently know. And if that turns out to be wrong, we've acted on wrong science in the past and things have turned out okay in the end. Okay, it'll be all right. Okay, it'll all be all right on the night. Okay, we will get there in the end as a society and have the right knowledge. Right? But for now, there are differing opinions on climate change, and it is a debate because the science is inconclusive. And we have observed long-term climate shifting patterns and short-term ones, and we don't really know the connection between the two and how climate change short-term lines up with climate change long-term. We don't know, and we don't really know the full extent of human involvement in that because there's just not enough data to pull from yet. So, should we be focusing all our attention on climate change and zero emissions and carbon and all that stuff? No. And that's what I outlined in that video I mentioned earlier, is that I believe that rubbish and deforestation are far more pressing issues because deforestation hurts ecosystems, right? Rubbish hurts ecosystems. And by reducing trash, plastic waste, and reducing deforestation, the byproduct of that is not only, right, helping the wildlife, fixing the ecosystems and ground pollution, but by doing that, by making those small changes, we also, right, cut back on carbon emissions. And so that helps, like, with that issue, but also with the carbon emissions, if you still believe that's the biggest problem, those solutions help with that as well. And I outlined that in that video I mentioned earlier.
We have to see. 98% reduction in the climate disaster-related deaths in the last century. 8 times as many people are going to die of cold temperatures this year than warm ones.
That's because you've mismanaged the economy so bad that people are freezing to death in New York City winters. That's what's happening here, right? The cold climate deaths are not because the climate is changing to be colder, right? It's because people can't afford to keep their heaters on. They can't afford to keep their lights on. They can't afford electricity in this economy, in this cost of living crisis. Winters still exist whether the climate is changing or not. That's an economic issue, not as much a climate issue, because people have to live without the lights on or live on the streets, where of course they're going to be cold in a winter.
Yet against that backdrop, there's an issue coming up in Iowa. It's core to Iowa farmers. I met Kim Junker, Kathy Stockdale, and other farmers who have to have a carbon capture pipeline built across their land using eminent domain to do it. That's unconstitutional and it's wrong. And if you thought COVID was bad, what's coming with this climate agenda is far worse. We should not be bending the knee to this new religion. That is what it is. It is a substitute for a modern religion. We are flogging ourselves and losing our modern way of life, bowing to this new God at climate, and that will end on my watch.
So there you go, guys. That is Vivek Ramaswamy, or whatever his name is. I'm probably mispronouncing it. I'm sorry. This guy, as you can see, he's a bit of a character. He has beliefs, a lot of which I halfway agree with, but he falls flat. It's like he has an open goal, right? It's like he's got an open goal, but he just whiffs it. You know, he just whiffs it. And it goes over the crossbar. You know, it's that classic case, right, of conservatives running headfirst into the point, but still missing it. It happens so often, right? And really all this video did was dispel a lot of myths of conservative rhetoric, right? Yeah, I guess all I can say to that is make sure to stay informed, guys, because yeah, there's some scary stuff out there. Some of the things Republicans and Democrats, mind you, some of the things anyone in a position of power is trying to pull right now is not for the people. They're serving their own interests, right? Every time you hear something that a politician says, ask yourself, how does this help society? Because a lot of the time, it doesn't. It doesn't push us forward, right? It doesn't help us grow. It doesn't help the economy. It doesn't help society. It doesn't help progress. So, I think the important thing to note, guys, question everything. Even the things that you believe, question them. Anyways, with that being said, leave that link to that climate science video I made down below. If you guys want to check out some of my other videos, I've got some on the screen right now, one that I think you might enjoy, and my most recent video. And without further ado, I will catch you all in the next one. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share this video with your friends if you have any, and I will catch you all in the next one. Goodbye for now.